So there's a scene where Sister Louise is kind of introduced kind of out of nowhere, and she is horrible. Her acting is absolutely terrible. I thought she was the worst actress like I've seen in a while. But then Tony's mom came in, and she took the crown. She just snatched it off Sister Louise's head. She took that one. Overacting 101. She could teach she can give a PhD in that one. She could a PhD course in overact. Greetings everyone, my name is Dr. Jason Freeman. I'd like to welcome you all to my channel. In this video, I review the 1976 film Pressure, directed by Horace Ové and starring Herbert Norville and Oscar James. I'm gonna tell you what I liked about the film, I'm gonna tell you what I didn't like about the film, then I'm gonna tell you if I think you should see the film or just skip it. Now at any point, feel free to click the notification bell or subscribe to my channel to get more content. So without further ado, let's begin. My voice, by the way, I'm getting over a cold, so that's why if you've seen other of my videos, I probably sound a little bit different. If I don't, then disregard what I'm saying, but I can hear myself and I sound a little bit more hoarse. So again, just pardon it. It's just hopefully by the time in a couple of days I'll be a lot better. But right now I can hear that my voice is being a little bit hoarse. So. Now, Pressure is about a young man named Anthony who's trying to find work just a little bit out of high school or secondary school in England. And so as he's trying to find work, he's running into all these obstacles, prejudice, all the typical things you expect at this time period that a young black male would be facing. Now, the film primarily focuses in on Anthony, or Tony, played by Herbert Norville. But you also have his family. So you have his brother Colin, his parents, as well as a group of friends that are kind of brought in partway into the film as kind of the main kind of protagonist of the film. Now, what did I like about the film? Well, the main thing I liked about the film was the messaging in the films. They talked about the subnormal schools. If you've seen my education, so Small Acts education review, that's also the issue that's talked about in that film. That film actually is set in about the time period in which this film is taking place, the late 70s, early 80s. And so you get to see it's the same issue. So they're talking about it, in that time period, late 70s, early 80s, and we see the same thing from a film that's done at that time. So this was something that was very much being talked about in the society at that time as well. So I love the messaging. I love the fact that they are calling out this systemic issue at a time when these type of movies probably were not as common as they are now. There's a time when I think like 8 years after the Enoch Powell Rivers of Blood speech, which was pretty well received by a lot of white English people at the time, that was very anti-immigrant, anti-black immigrant in particular. Though, of course, Anthony is born in Britain. He's British himself. That's where he grew up. But yeah, it's very much, speaking truth to power at a time that probably was not as receptive as it would be today, even today there's pushback on any kind of messages, calling out racial discrimination within society. And the film also is taking place just a couple years before the Brixton riots, which took place in 1981. And so you're starting to see in this film that the elements that were going to lead to those riots in regards to over-policing of black people, police brutality, and the lack of opportunity that many black people were facing in Britain at that time. Another thing I like is that they did at one point very early in the film showcase an interracial relationship. Now, putting in perspective of that time of the late 1970s, in the United States, having a interracial relationship or interracial dating in that case, in such a major way in the film, in particular between a black male and a white woman. So again, I think about the Jeffersons also in that time, but it was a white male and black woman, which is seen a little bit differently within American society, at least, and I'm assuming British society as well. So to have an interracial dating situation being front and center at one point, I think is very important, and it was very, very interesting. And for that time in particular, kind of showing some of the inherent racism that was within society that they were dealing with. So I like that part of the film. Also, kind of going back to some reviews I've done earlier, there's this one white police officer in a scene that he has his Rottweiler on a chain, and the chief like tell him, let it go, and he's like, no, it's everything's under control. I'm not gonna let this dog go. So you had this one good, nice white police officer, and I think about like Small Axe, as well as even also Babylon, and how every single one of them are evil SOBs, like every single cop. And they had this one good white police officer. So again, I don't think I'm crazy in this regard that you can't have I mean, again, I think it's not realistic to show any group of people, whether it be white people, black people, Native American, Asian, what have you, as all evil. And again, this has been the case with black characters for a long time, where all the black people are criminals, or thugs, or drug addicts, or what have you. I just don't think it works the other way, where you have, all the white people, every single one of them are racist. And they even, one other thing I liked about the film is at the end, there's this one of the Black Panthers is kind of saying every white person I ever met is evil. And then the protagonist, Anthony's like, well, no, I have white friends. They treat me pretty well. And the white guys at the beginning of the movie are his friends, and they seem to be treating him pretty well. So again, I think it's unrealistic to show in any movie every single white person as evil. I just don't think. I think anybody who sees that, who has any interaction with white people on any level, is going to be like, well, that's not every single person. You can't have a broad brush and show every single white person is evil. It's just not realistic. So. And one little kind of funny side note, there's this one scene when they go to a chicken shop, which I know is a big thing in Britain, and it was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm just envisioning all these very posh, proper British people getting these big buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken for this exotic American goods. I don't know. I just thought I looked at it. It made me laugh when I saw the Kentucky Fried Chicken thing at the top. So I'm not a fan of Kentucky Fried Chicken, by the way. Much more Bojangles. One last thing I liked about the film is Anthony's a pretty snazzy dresser. I liked how he was dressed in the film. The one thing I will say, though, is this is one scene where he is working at a hospital as a porter. And I swear he's wearing the same clothes he's been wearing the whole film. He just has a white little coat over it. And that's the thing I can kind of tell, even though this film was supposed to be taking over weeks, maybe even months. And he's wearing basically the same clothes the whole time. How do you not see that? All right. What did I not like about the film? The acting in this film was, how do I say it? Terrible. Just really, really bad. The major thing with the acting is there's a lot of overacting. So, for example, if people are angry, they have to be yelling and screaming over the top. And they go from 0 to 60 just like that. The other thing is if they're sad, they gotta have their head down, kind of like drooped. They have to kind of show it very clearly that they're sad. There's nothing else, no subtext, nothing else. It's just, you got to show it. Just so much overacting. And at various points, it's almost like they're saying these written lines, which, again, good acting, you can kind of hide that. And often, I think the best acting is when they actually, a lot more ad lib, where people are more natural. But in this one, it's more so you can tell they're reading lines, especially the mom. So I mentioned her at the very top. And she literally is the worst actress in this film. I don't know anything about the lady. I'm not even going to say her name, but she was absolutely horrible. And I'm sure that the director was just trying to get people around who maybe didn't have acting experience. But it's very clear that these are not actors. These are not actors and actresses, and they're pretty bad. And close second in bad acting was Sister Louise. And she's talking, when she first appears, she's kind of talking these weird rhymes. It kind of reminds me of T.I. in the first Ant-Man movie, rhyming for just no reason in normal talk. I've heard T.I. talk, so I know T.I. doesn't talk like that. And so I'm sure the actress doesn't talk like that either. And so just all this rhyming, and she just kind of comes out of nowhere and just is kind of like, not realistic, not at all. And so, yeah, just acting in this film was pretty bad. So and that, I think it's very distracting. And so, yeah, that's just one of the things, my biggest issue with the film. And another interesting thing that I guess I didn't like, but I laughed at it, is, so very much this is an independent film. And so there are a lot of non-actors, and it's pretty clear they're non-actors. They're constantly looking at the camera. So there's one scene in a church where this little boy is looking at the camera and kind of winking, like, what, think of it in little kids, it's like closing his eyes, winking at the camera. It's very clear. If you watch the film, you can see it. He's just winking at the camera. But even there's this one scene later when they're at this Black Panther meeting, and one of the adults turns around, and looks straight in the camera. It's like I get that this is set in the '70s, and that maybe cameras were not as. I mean, it's certainly not as common as they are now. I mean, I have a camera on my phone, but the point is, the idea is that if I've seen movies from that same time period, they're not staring into the camera. They're not they're talking to the person in front of them. That, but these people are literally in the church. Also, same thing with the church. There's one part where they all stand up. Like the preachers like rise and stand or whatever, and they're singing a song. And some girls turn their head and look straight at the camera. I was like, wow. The director has to at some point say, don't do that. Let's do another take on this. But maybe maybe they couldn't. I don't know. But yeah, that's one other. Again, it's fun. I laughed at it, but it's not great. And one of the other issues I had with the film is there's a lot of tell not show. So I know with good films, it's a lot more show not tell. For example, at the very beginning of the film, the mom is talking about I work my ass off. I'm doing these three different work at three different white people's houses and all this stuff. And I'm thinking it would be a lot more powerful, so maybe in the beginning of the film, if they're showing her like going to work, going from one house to the other, showing her sitting down, showing all the pain on her face, the tiredness, something. Her just saying it had zero effect at all. It's just, she's just, talking and yelling, again, overacting. And there's a lot of that. And also they say that Anthony is so smart. He's this bright boy. He's the top student in the class. That doesn't come across at all. He's constantly doing dumb things. He's at an interview and he's just kind of sitting there staring. He's not really even interacting. You expect somebody who's going in an interview, you're practicing, you're prepped, and he's literally he's nothing. He's giving nothing. I wouldn't hire him either. And the other thing is, I don't want to give too many spoilers. Okay, there's one scene where they're in a store and his boys are stealing out of the store, and all he has to do is just stand outside. They told stand outside. Don't go in the store. Just stand there. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this idiot's not good. He's gonna walk in there, and he did. He walked in there and he goes in and he knocks some stuff down, and one of his boys goes to jail. He's a smart one. I mean, look, I get the whole common sense and book smart thing. I obviously have a PhD. I have degrees and stuff, PhD on the side. So I get the book smart versus common sense. I can be the absent-minded professor. But if I'm at a store with a bunch of people and it's like, just stand outside. Well, when I'm going home, because I'm not going to jail for anybody. But the point is, he had one thing to do. Even if he doesn't want to be involved in it, again, he can walk off. He's not he's not in the store with the guys initially, so it's not like they're gonna just. They might have just grabbed him up. Who knows? But the point is, he had one job and he messed it up. And that was kind of throughout the film. He was constantly doing kind of dumb things, though they were telling us the whole time that he's really, really smart. Didn't see it. And the editing, and I've talked about this in other reviews as well. The editing is all over the place. And the thing with this one is this is even more egregious than even like what we saw in Small Axe. So what happens is there's a scene and then it cuts to something that was maybe mentioned a little bit in that prior scene, and it's already over and it's done with. So Porter, this is Porter job, and they have this whole discussion about this Porter job. And next thing you know, he's been in the Porter job for like 3 months. I don't know how long. They don't give any kind of time reference in this film. But like 3 months, it seems like, or he's been in the job for a while. They literally, his brother's saying, well, our mom has mentioned this Porter job. And, it's do you want to take that? You want to work with me? Or, with the Black Power movement. And literally, he says, I'm going to look at the job. And then next, he's working the job. And they show a whole scene of him working the job. And again, anything in between, any setup, just done. We skip like 6 months or something. I don't know. The other thing, this other kind of jarring scene is, so it's towards the end of the film. Sister Louise and him are on the couch. He's pouting. He's a young guy. Though that's not an excuse for his bad acting, because I was thinking about the kid in Education who did a great job. I didn't like the first half of that film. So the Small Axe anthology series episode Education. I didn't like the first half, but the kid was good throughout. And so he's way younger than this guy, and this guy's just terrible. But he's sitting on the couch, he's pouting, and his sister Louise, after just chewing out another guy over marijuana, because yeah, at the time marijuana is illegal and it's drug. But either way, she's like chewing out this guy, and then she's on the couch, and she turns and looks over at Anthony. Cut to, they just had sex. There's a little bit in the first time she's appeared where she's kind of flirting with him, but it's a jump. It's a leap. And literally she just turns and looks at him, and then they just had sex. Oh, the other thing about it is she has this. So there was a whole police raid, and she got beat up essentially by the British police. She's like an African American woman too. I think the actress and the character. And so she had this big lump on her head, having been beat up by the cops. In the sex scene or the post sex scene, because you don't really, there's nothing. I think she touched his shoulder or something. But in the post sex scene, it's gone. Now, I saw the director talking about he was into like the Italian, like Fellini, like these kind of very surreal type films, which I'm not a fan of. I did not like Phantom Thread or those kind of surreal type films. But either that was the case that this was all in his head, or it's just bad, bad editing or bad continuity. But either way, it just jumped. It jumped. They're on the couch. She looks at him, and then boom, they just had sex. And it just kind of jumps around. And it also, just a last thing, at the very end of the film, this is really weird, violent nude scene, and it's full frontal male nudity in that scene. Yeah, this film's a mess. So, should you see it or skip it? You probably can guess what I would say on this one. I mean, I've been kind of trashing the movie. Yeah, skip it. There are much better films that deal with the same subject matter that you can watch, even from that same time period. So I just reviewed the film Babylon. So let me get this straight. I think it's here. I think this is where the card is. I think the card is here. I keep getting it wrong. I think the card is here. So check out that review for Babylon. Babylon is a far superior film. It also follows a young guy who is on a journey, same just as Anthony, who's dealing with the issues of British society at around the same time period. Babylon was set in 80, I think it was shot or came out in 81 or 80, no, sorry, in 1980, and this came out in 76 or 75, 76. So not that far apart. But it's a far superior movie. The acting is better. When people say things, there actually seems like real emotion. It's very convincing. They're not just reading lines. I mean, in particular in Babylon, there's Beefy and then there's Blue. So both of them are just amazing, really good actors. And so that's very much lacking in Pressure, the film Pressure. So I would say skip this film, watch Babylon, watch Small Axe. Small Axe deals with some of the same issues, like forgetting the subnormal schools. Even though it's set in that time and it's filmed in the current period, I think it just does a better job. So check out other films, check out those other films, and I'll just skip this film. It's just the acting is so off and so not great. That's just jarring and just kind of just takes you out of the film constantly. And I would say for the time, this is an important film. I believe this was the first Black British film that got any kind of wide release. It's from a Trinidadian, so Horace Ové is a Trinidadian director. So again, I get it. It's an important film for that time. It needed to be done for that time. That being said, we've had better films since that time. Watch those. This one is just not that great. Now, if you found this review helpful, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, please share this video with anyone you think might find this review helpful. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.